So today we're going to play detective. We're investigating a medical mystery that might just explain a whole range of frustrating symptoms, and it all points to one single, often overlooked culprit. Have you ever dealt with this? This really frustrating mix of symptoms. I mean, maybe you get a splitting headache after one meal, but then you feel bloated and gassy after a completely different one. It can feel totally random and disconnected, right? But what if? What if there's a common thread tying it all together? Okay, let's really look at the clues here because they are spread all across the body. You've got digestive issues, and bloating is a huge one. Get this, in one study, it showed up in 92% of patients. Then you have nervous system symptoms, things like headaches and dizziness. And on top of all that, you've got skin reactions and even respiratory problems. This is exactly what makes it so tough to figure out. The symptoms seem like they have nothing to do with each other. And you might be thinking this is some rare, obscure issue, but it's really not. Research actually suggests that food intolerance affects about 1 in 5 people around the world. That is a massive number of people just trying to understand what's going on inside their own bodies. First things first, we've got to be super clear about something. We are not talking about a classic food allergy here. An allergy, that's your immune system going into overdrive. It can be life-threatening, and it's actually pretty rare. What we're focusing on today is a food intolerance. That's a digestive system reaction. It's not life-threatening, but wow, its effect on your quality of life can be huge, and it is far, far more common. All right, let's pull back the curtain and meet our prime suspect. It's time to unmask the real culprit behind this whole mystery, a chemical called histamine. Now, it's easy to hear histamine and think it's the bad guy, but it's not. In fact, it's a vital player in your body. It helps your immune system fight off invaders, it helps with your digestion, and it even acts as a messenger in your brain. So the problem isn't histamine itself. The problem is when you have too much of it. And that brings us to the real heart of the issue, histamine intolerance. You know, the best way to picture this is with the histamine bucket analogy. We all have a bucket. And when that bucket fills up with histamine faster than your body can drain it, well, it overflows. And that overflow is what triggers all those different symptoms we just talked about. So what's filling up this bucket? Well, for the most part, it's the food we eat. Things that are aged, fermented, or just naturally high in histamine can pour a lot into your bucket very, very quickly. We're talking about things like aged cheese, wine, salami, and yep, even some healthy foods like avocado, spinach, and certain types of fish. And what's supposed to be draining the bucket? Well, the main drain pipe is an enzyme in your gut called diamine oxidase, or just DAO for short. Its whole job is to break down histamine from food. But, and this is a big but, a few things can clog this drain. Your genetics might make it less efficient, certain medications and alcohol can block it, and not getting enough key nutrients like vitamin C and copper can also slow things way down. Okay, to really see how this all works in action, let's zero in on one of the most brutal symptoms out there, the migraine. So what's really fascinating here is the role of something called mast cells. Just think of them as the emergency dispatchers for your immune system. The moment a trigger shows up, whether it's an allergen or a high histamine food, these cells are the absolute first responders. And here's the chain reaction. First, that trigger arrives. In response, the mast cell degranulates, which is just a fancy way of saying it bursts open and releases everything inside. And a huge part of that payload is a flood of histamine. That histamine then directly flips the switch on the trigeminal pain pathways, the very nerves that are responsible for migraine headaches. So once it gets to the brain, this flood of histamine does two things. It makes blood vessels widen, and it makes the pain nerves all around them extra sensitive. And what's the result? That classic, awful, throbbing pain that defines a migraine. It's a direct biological line from that trigger right to the pain you feel. So you're probably thinking, if the science is this clear, why on earth is getting a diagnosis for histamine intolerance so notoriously difficult? Well, let's get into the investigation. And here's the really frustrating part. There is no single magic test for this. Like we saw at the beginning, the symptoms are all over the place, and they look a lot like the symptoms of so many other conditions, everything from IBS to classic allergies. Let's look at the toolkit doctors have. They can test the levels of that DAO enzyme in your blood, but the problem is those levels can go up and down all day long. A skin prick test might show a reaction, but it can't really tell if this is the issue or some other allergy. Histamine challenges can be risky. They can even cause symptoms in perfectly healthy people. And while genetic testing can give you a clue, it's really just one small piece of a much bigger puzzle. So the bottom line is this: diagnosing histamine intolerance becomes a process of elimination. It really requires a doctor to connect the dots, to look at your medical history, combine results from a few different tests, and most importantly, see how your symptoms actually respond when you change your diet and treatment. Which, of course, brings us to the most important part of all, the action plan. What can you actually do to manage your histamine bucket and finally get some relief? The single most effective strategy, the one researchers call the gold standard, is a temporary low histamine diet. And I really want to stress the word temporary. This isn't about restricting yourself for life. It's about a short-term experiment to calm your system down and see if your symptoms get better. So this just means taking a short breaks from foods that are known to pour a lot into that histamine bucket. As a general rule, you're thinking about things that are aged, fermented, or preserved, along with a few specific fresh foods like avocados and bananas. But the good news is there is a ton of stuff you can still enjoy. The focus just shifts to fresh, unprocessed foods. Fresh veggies and fruits, fresh meats, grains like rice, and eggs, these are all generally very well tolerated. The whole goal is just to lower the amount of histamine coming in. And hey, diet isn't the only tool in the toolbox. There are other really promising strategies. For example, supplementing with the DAO enzyme itself has been shown in multiple studies to significantly improve symptoms. Antihistamines can definitely offer some short-term relief. And if you know you're deficient, supplementing with nutrients like vitamin C and copper can be super effective, since they're essential for that DAO enzyme to do its job right. So I'll leave you with this question. After seeing all the connections, the mechanism, and the solutions, it kind of reframes the whole issue, doesn't it? Those random, frustrating symptoms might not be so random after all. They could be really clear signals from your body's histamine system. And learning to listen to those signals, well, that might just be the key to finally solving your own health mystery.